The lights inside the AGT theater dimmed slightly as the stage crew finished preparing for the next act. The audience buzzed with chatter, still energized from the previous performers, unaware that a moment of pure magic was about to unfold. Backstage, a young Filipino man stood quietly, gently rubbing his hands together as he waited for his cue. He wasn't dressed in anything flashy, no rhinestones, no elaborate costume, just a simple white shirt, black pants, and a small silver chain resting against his chest. But there was something in his eyes, a spark that revealed both nerves and a quiet strength. A stage assistant gave him an encouraging nod. "You're up," they whispered. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and felt the cold floor beneath his shoes as he approached the curtain. As the music faded from the previous act, the iconic AGT announcer called out his name and origin. The audience clapped politely, still unsure what to expect from someone they hadn't seen in any teaser or viral pre-show clip. The curtains parted, and he stepped into the spotlight. For a moment, everything felt overwhelming. The blinding lights, the towering stage, the thousands of faces staring back at him, and the massive cameras capturing his every move. But he kept walking, his shoulders slightly hunched at first, as if carrying the weight of years of dreams and sacrifices. Each step brought him closer to the center of the stage, where the bright white X marked the place countless hopefuls had stood before him. Simon Cowell, sitting in his usual spot, raised an eyebrow the moment he saw the contestant. Simon had a way of reading people instantly, and his expression suggested he wasn't sure whether this shy young man could handle the pressure. Howie leaned forward, curious. Heidi rested her chin on her hand with a soft smile, and Sophia tilted her head, trying to guess the contestant's story before he even spoke. The Filipino contestant stopped right at the microphone stand. He placed both hands behind him, a habit he picked up to control his nervousness, and exhaled slowly. The room went quiet. The judges waited. The audience leaned forward. Even the cameras moved in closer, capturing every detail of his timid but heartfelt presence. He introduced himself in a soft, slightly accented voice. "My name is Raphael. I'm 24, and I'm from the Philippines." Some people in the audience clapped, a few even cheering with pride as small Philippine flags waved among the crowd. Raphael smiled shyly, the corners of his lips curling just enough to show his appreciation. It was clear English wasn't his first language, but he spoke carefully and respectfully, determined not to make a mistake on such a big stage. Sophia was the first to engage. "What do you do back home?" she asked kindly. Raphael looked down for a second before answering. I work as a delivery driver, and I sing sometimes, when I can." The judges nodded, but Simon still hadn't reacted. His face remained unreadable. Heidi leaned in. "And why did you come to AGT?" This time, Raphael took a deeper breath. "Because this is my dream. My father used to play Elvis songs when I was little. He said I sounded like him sometimes. I want to make him proud." A soft awe rippled through the crowd. The judges' expressions softened, except Simon, who simply pressed his lips together and continued observing the young man with a measured gaze. But Raphael wasn't intimidated. Behind his gentle demeanor, there was a heart that had carried years of hope, a dream shaped by the melodies he grew up listening to. He continued, "I know I don't look like Elvis, and I didn't come with a costume or anything, but I want to show you how much his music meant to me." The honesty in his voice struck something in the room. It wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't dramatic, it was pure. Simon finally spoke, leaning slightly forward, arms still crossed. "So, you're going to sing Elvis?" Raphael nodded confidently this time. "Yes, sir," the audience murmured. Some were excited, others skeptical. After all, many contestants claimed to sing Elvis, but very few truly captured the spirit of the king. Simon let out a quiet exhale and nodded slowly. "All right, let's hear it." Raphael stepped toward the microphone, adjusting it slightly to match his height. He closed his eyes, not to hide, but to center himself. In that moment, he remembered everything. His father singing in their small living room, the old radio crackling with Elvis classics, the nights he stayed up practicing in secret because he didn't want to disturb the neighbors, and the long journey from the Philippines to America, hoping AGT would give him a chance. The camera zoomed in on his face. The lights focused. The audience fell silent. You could feel the tension in the air, not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind that comes right before a moment people remember forever. Raphael breathed in deeply, and as he opened his eyes, something shifted. The shy boy who walked onto the stage had disappeared. In his place was someone ready, someone who had waited his whole life to stand exactly where he was standing now. Simon noticed. His posture changed subtly, curiosity replacing doubt. Raphael raised the mic slightly, signaling he was ready for the music cue. The pianist behind the curtain prepared. The first soft chords of an Elvis classic, warm, nostalgic, and instantly recognizable, filled the theater. The stage transformed. A golden light washed over Raphael, giving him an almost angelic glow. The audience recognized the song and gasped softly, some smiling, others whispering, "Elvis?" The judges straightened up, intrigued. Raphael opened his mouth, and just before he sang the first note, the entire theater felt like it was holding its breath. Scene 1 ends here, right on the edge of magic, right before the voice that would shake the entire AGT stage. The soft, nostalgic chords of the Elvis classic floated through the AGT theater like a gentle breeze, sweeping across the audience and settling into every corner of the room. The glow of warm golden lights illuminated Raphael as he stood beneath them, shoulders finally relaxed, fingers lightly touching the microphone stand. The quiet confidence in his posture was subtle but unmistakable. Something inside him had shifted. This was no longer the shy young man who had walked onto the stage. This was the performer he had always dreamed of becoming. The audience leaned in as the first beat of the music echoed. Simon Cowell, known for detecting greatness within seconds, narrowed his eyes, already sensing that something unusual was about to happen. Heidi moved the hair off her shoulders and smiled curiously. Howie adjusted his glasses. Sophia clasped her hands together, excited but uncertain. Raphael took a breath, and then he sang the very first note. It wasn't loud, it wasn't showy, but it was pure, rich, deep, velvety, the kind of tone that makes a person's heart stop and recalibrate. The audience gasped audibly. A few people in the front row jolted in surprise. Those who had been whispering or adjusting their cameras froze mid-motion, their faces shifting instantly from mild interest to stunned disbelief. His voice didn't just sound like Elvis, it felt like Elvis. It carried that unmistakable warmth, that buttery smoothness, that old-school charisma that the world hadn't heard live in decades. Simon's reaction was immediate. His eyes widened, his crossed arms slowly uncrossed, his posture snapped upright. For Simon Cowell, whose reactions had become famous worldwide, this shift was enormous. It was the same expression he gave only when witnessing something extraordinary, rare, raw, and unforgettable. Raphael continued singing, and his voice grew stronger, revealing layers of texture and depth no one in the room had expected. There was power behind it, shaped by years of singing in hidden spaces, in the shower, on long delivery routes, on late nights when his neighbors were asleep. Every experience, every hardship, every dream compressed into each note like a lifetime of emotions being released, all at once. The camera zoomed in on his face. Though his features were calm, his eyes glimmered with intensity, focused, alive, fully immersed in the song. He wasn't trying to impersonate Elvis, he was channeling the emotion behind each lyric, making it his own. As he moved into the second line, his body loosened naturally. He gave a small, subtle lip curl, one of Elvis's signature moves, without even thinking about it. The audience went wild, erupting in cheers. Even those who had planned to record the entire performance forgot about their phones, lowering them in awe. Heidi's hand shot to her chest. "Oh my God," she whispered. Sophia's mouth dropped open, completely frozen. Howie whispered something to Simon, but Simon didn't respond. He was too focused, his eyes locked on Raphael like he was witnessing something historically significant. The music swelled, and Raphael leaned slightly forward into the mic, his voice rising just enough to fill the room with warmth and resonance. He hit a high note, not overly powerful, but elegant, controlled, and delivered with the kind of confidence only true artists possess. The crowd roared. People began standing up mid-performance, which almost never happens. Some waved small Philippine flags proudly. Others clapped rhythmically. A few even cried, especially older fans who had grown up during Elvis's era. For them, this wasn't just a talent show moment. It felt like a piece of history being revived right before their eyes. Raphael heard the cheers, but he didn't let them distract him. He stayed locked in, his soul tethered to the music. Every lyric he delivered carried weight. Stories of his childhood, Memories of his father playing Elvis records, dreams of singing on big stages he only saw on TV. The judges were fully invested now. Sophia whispered, "He sounds unbelievable." Heidi nodded, goosebumps visibly rising on her arms. Simon, normally immovable, began smiling. A real, genuine, proud smile, the kind he only wore when he knew he was discovering something rare. At the bridge of the song, Raphael did something bold. He stepped away from the mic just slightly and added a soft growl in his tone, channeling Elvis's raw vocal charisma. The crowd screamed. Cameras flashed. Every judge leaned closer, and Simon, unable to hide his excitement, silently mouthed the word, "Wow." The music continued building, and Raphael's confidence grew with it. He no longer looked nervous. He looked like he owned the stage. His right hand rose as he emphasized the emotion in his final verse. The lights intensified, shifting to deep blue and white beams that danced around him like a spotlighted halo. Then came the final note, the note that would become the moment replayed millions of times across social media. He closed his eyes, inhaled slowly, and released a powerful, crystal-clear vibrato that soared through the entire auditorium. It lasted longer than anyone expected, strong, unwavering, flawless. The room erupted before he even finished sustaining the note. People jumped to their feet. The applause thundered. Screams echoed from every direction. Even the back rows stood up. The judges rose too, Simon included. He didn't just stand. He pushed his chair back, shook his head in disbelief, and clapped, an extremely rare gesture from him during a performance. Raphael finally opened his eyes and saw the entire room standing, applauding, cheering his name. A smile spread across his face, soft at first, then wide, warm, emotional. His eyes glistened with tears he tried holding back. He had done it. He had delivered the performance of his life. The music faded. The lights dimmed to a golden glow. The audience refused to sit down. Raphael lowered the mic slowly, overwhelmed by the sight of thousands of people celebrating him. The humble delivery driver from the Philippines had just shaken the entire AGT stage and left Simon Cowell speechless. For a split second after Raphael delivered his final soaring note, the entire AGT auditorium hung in stunned silence, like the world itself had paused to breathe in the magic he created. It was a moment suspended in time, glowing with the electricity of something unforgettable. Raphael stood still, chest rising and falling gently, his eyes glistening with emotion. Even the lights seemed frozen above him, bathing him in a warm golden halo, and then the room exploded. A tidal wave of applause crashed through the theater, louder than anything heard that night. Thousands of people jumped to their feet at once, the roar echoing off the high ceilings and shaking the rafters. It was not just a standing ovation, it was a celebration, the kind reserved only for once-in-a-generation performances. Audience members clapped so hard their hands stung. Some screamed his name. Others whistled wildly, waving small Philippine flags in the air. Many didn't even know they had tears streaming down their faces until they felt them on their cheeks. It was raw, overwhelming, and beautifully chaotic. Raphael blinked rapidly, trying to steady himself. He had imagined applause, maybe polite clapping, but never this. Never an entire room rising in unison with such force and emotion that it felt like the ground beneath him trembled. The judges were already standing. Heidi was the first to rise, leaping to her feet before the final note had even finished ringing in her ears. Her hands covered her mouth in shock, eyes wide with wonder. Goosebumps prickled along her arms as she stared at Raphael like she had just witnessed a miracle. Sophia stood next, clapping intensely, her face lit with excitement. "Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!" she repeated, unable to contain herself. Her whole body showed the kind of thrill that only a performer can feel when watching another performer deliver perfection. Howie rose too, laughing in disbelief as he applauded. "That was insane!" he shouted over the noise, even though none of the judges could hear each other through the thunder of the crowd. But it was Simon, always the emotional anchor of the panel, who made the audience erupt again. Simon didn't simply stand. He pushed his chair back so hard it slid a full foot behind him. He stood slowly at first, shaking his head in pure astonishment, and then he began clapping. Not softly, not politely, but with real conviction, something rare, something meaningful. The cameras zoomed in on him, the crowd screamed even louder. Raphael saw all of this, every judge on their feet, the roar of the audience, Simon's approval, and his knees nearly buckled. He gripped the microphone stand to steady himself, overwhelmed by the surreal sight unfolding before him. His vision blurred slightly from tears, but he didn't care. For once in his life, he allowed himself to feel everything. The cheer continued, stretching on for long, unbroken seconds. The energy was so intense that the theater staff waiting backstage looked at one another with wide eyes. Even they knew this was not normal. This was not just applause. This was history being made. Finally, the applause softened just enough for the judges to begin speaking. Heidi was practically bouncing with excitement. "That was unbelievable," she exclaimed, drawing out each word for emphasis. "You didn't just sing an Elvis song. You became the emotion behind it. I have goosebumps everywhere. That was absolutely stunning." Raphael bowed his head slightly, his smile trembling with gratitude. Sophia jumped in next, hands still pressed to her chest. "You gave us the soul of Elvis, but you were still you. That voice, oh my God, your control, your power, your presence, you surprised all of us. I love you. I love everything about that performance." The crowd cheered again, chanting his name. Howie leaned forward dramatically. "You know what I love? I love when someone walks on this stage looking humble, quiet, unsure, and then completely blows the roof off this place. That voice came out of nowhere. That was one of the most shocking performances of the night. Amazing job." Raphael nodded humbly, overwhelmed. Then the room fell quiet. Everyone knew whose opinion mattered most. The cameras turned. The audience leaned forward. Simon Cowell took a breath. He stared at Raphael for a long moment before speaking, long enough to build suspense, long enough to make everyone hold their breath. "Raphael," he paused again. A smile crept onto his face, slow, genuine, proud. "I did not expect that. Not in a million years. The second you sang your first note, I felt something I haven't felt in a long time. You didn't imitate Elvis, you honored him. And that," he pointed toward Raphael, "is talent. Real talent." The room exploded again, but Simon wasn't finished. He stepped forward in his chair, leaning his arms on the desk. "Your voice is magical. Your story is inspiring. And your performance," he pointed toward the stage, "that was iconic." Raphael inhaled sharply, his lips trembling with emotion. Simon continued, his tone softer now. "Your father would be so proud of you right now." That did it. Raphael's tears finally spilled over. He lifted a hand to wipe them, but the crowd began cheering again, louder this time, supporting him in his emotion, celebrating him with love and pride. Then something extraordinary happened. People in the audience began chanting, "Golden buzzer, golden buzzer, golden buzzer." The chant grew and grew and grew. The judges exchanged glances, surprised, excited, unsure. Simon looked at the golden buzzer, then back at Raphael. Raphael covered his mouth with his hand, shaking his head, overwhelmed at the possibility. Simon narrowed his eyes, thinking, contemplating. The crowd fell into thrilling suspense. Raphael waited. The judges waited. The world watched in anticipation. And whether the golden buzzer was hit now or later didn't matter, because Raphael had already sealed his place in AGT history. His performance had become one of those legendary moments people would replay for years, the kind that spreads across the internet like wildfire and inspires millions. In that single night, a humble Filipino delivery driver had transformed into a global sensation, standing on the biggest stage in the world with nothing but his voice and a dream.